Well, you kind of mentioned too that right now we're in a state of all of our phones, our technology, fake lighting inside, that we kind of have blue light overload. Can you
Hmm.
explain some of the health effects that that's having and how we can mitigate those?
Sure, absolutely. And so blue light, again, it's an energetic light. It's one of those ones that's just available. It's actually the light frequency that our bodies have used to tell what time of day it is. It's just the blue light. So we've got like these little receptors in the backs of our eyes, on our skin, in our subcutaneous fat, like the pinchable fat. We have these little receptors, and I just liken them to like catcher's mitts. And there's these catcher's mitts that are waiting to capture that blue light, right? And so they catch those blue light photons and hold them. And based on the number of catcher's mitts that are full, determines what time of day it is, because there's no blue light at sunrise, there's no blue light at sunset, and we get more and more and more of it, and then we get less and less and less of it. So naturally we're going to get more catcher's mitts full and then less catcher's mitts full. And so that's how we've determined what time of day it is, year in and year out, year in and year out, over and over and over again. And so tech companies were probably smart to say, well, I want someone to stare at a screen and I want them to feel energized. We also know that that blue light frequency stimulates the dopamine pathway in the brain. So there's that addictive quality to it. Believe it or
Okay.
not, you can make dopamine from sunlight too, through your eyes. But just like you do serotonin. But that being said, like, so we get this blue light screen that's super bright. It's like the middle of the day all the time. It never changes. And so it really starts to burn our dopamine tracks. So I deal with a ton of adolescents, or I also teach a couple of college classes where I'm dealing with students who come to me with anxiety, depression. And part of it is because they've run these pathways so much with their tech that it's hard for them to get enough of a hit of dopamine to elevate their mood.
Hey there, and welcome back to the Reshape Your Health podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Morgan Nolte. Today, we have a really special guest, Carrie B. I know that you're going to love her. And like so many, Carrie has had quite a unique health journey. As a college athlete, supposedly at the pinnacle of health and fitness, she suffered from joint pain, chronic ligament issues, and insomnia. After her first child was born, she developed stomach pain, extreme low energy, brain fog, and digestive issues. So, armed with her undergraduate degree in biology and a master's degree in applied clinical nutrition, along with certifications as a personal trainer, massage therapist, and performance breathing coach, Carrie has made it her mission to discover foundational strategies for health and healing. The past 5 years has taken her deep into the realm of quantum biology. Now, I know that sounds intimidating, but we're going to break it down for you. So, of quantum biology and how sunlight, water, and quantum fields are at the core of health optimization. In private clinical practice, she helps clients apply key strategies involving morning sunlight, circadian rhythm, movements, grounding, mitochondrial support, cold therapy, hydration, sleep, and intermittent fasting. Through the compounded effects of these habits, her clients can feel empowered and powerful healing with lasting benefits. So, we are going to cover a lot today. We're going to get deep into science, which we will both nerd out on, but recognize that you can take away even just a little tidbit from today to start optimizing your health. So, Carrie, thank you so much for joining this podcast. Give our listeners just an overview of who you are, where you are. I think that you have multiple children now. So, what's going on in your world and how did you get to where you are?
Thank you for having me, Morgan. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to chat with you. So I have a clinical practice based in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And so for the past, at least 15 years now, I've been working with clients in a variety of different settings just to try to improve their health. And I hear all sorts of things, from low energy to wanting to improve weight loss, better sleep, mood, anxiety, depression. And I thought to myself, like, there has to be some really foundational strategies connecting all of these things. And so that's where, in my I guess limited time, I am a mom of three, right? So in my limited time, I have taken a huge deep dive into the research, into clinical application of all this fun stuff that, when I explain where I'm coming from and how to implement it to clients, it all kind of makes sense. All those different things affect each other on a quantum level. And so I'm excited to chat with you about that today.
Okay, we first of all I told you, but I'm going to tell the listeners here, I strategically designed my undergraduate experience to avoid organic chemistry by getting into physical therapy school a year early. And I said, if I can get in a year early, I don't have to take organic chem and my GPA will for sure be higher. And so this kind of stuff, I love anatomy. I love physiology, but the quantum word, even reading that scared me, and I'm a science person. So we have to start just with the ground explanation, the umbrella explanation of what we're talking about today, the quantum biology. What is that? Take down any stigma or barrier that people have around it and help them understand it easily.
Absolutely. So quantum is just simply talking about things at a very, very tiny scale. So typically when we're talking about how to improve the health of the body, a doctor might say, take this medication, or, a nutritionist might say, take this supplement. And that's working at the chemical level.
Yeah.
And that's actually a bigger level than how the body operates. The body operates with electrons, protons, and light, which is called photons. And if we can understand how those things create energy in our body, they reduce inflammation in the body, they promote fat loss in the body. If we can kind of understand things at that tiny, tiny scale, then we can really see some profound improvements throughout the entire body.
Okay, so those are the three themes that we kind of came up with today was inflammation, fat loss, and energy. Where do you think makes the most sense to start with those three?
I think energy makes the most sense to start.
So tell us about energy. How is energy actually produced in the body? And we always hear like a big barrier to making healthy changes is a lack of energy. So maybe if we unwind and we start, let's improve our energy so that you have the mental and physical capacity to make bigger changes. What do you say to people there?
It has to be starting with energy. And I think we get this misnomer about how we get energy. It's like, do we get energy from coffee? Do we get energy from consuming a lot of fruits and vegetables? Do we get energy from sleep? So it's like, how do we make energy in our bodies? And inside each of our cells, we've got these little energy producers called mitochondria. And I tell my clients, the health of your mitochondria determines how efficiently you make energy. So someone who has a high amount of energy converts electrons into energy very efficiently. And so the whole goal then of trying to help improve someone's energy as a baseline strategy for health is how healthy can we make your mitochondria?
Okay, so can you break down a little bit more specifically for people that aren't familiar with a mitochondria? How exactly does that little energy producing factory work? Like what type of fuel can it use, for example?
Sure. So mitochondria only use electrons for fuel, but they also rely on light too. And so I kind of let me give you like the 2-minute overview of mitochondria and like kind of how they came to be. So, back in the day, right, billions of years ago, you had these little energy producing bacteria. Eventually they were mitochondria. They were really awesome at taking energy from the environment or taking electrons from the environment and making energy out of them. And then you had other bacteria who were like really energy poor. Like they were strong, they had a tough outer coating, they were really, really hardy bacteria, but they couldn't pull electrons from their environment to make energy. And so, billions of years ago, you had this synergy that happened, this symbiosis it's called, where basically the one bacterium said, hey, I'm super strong. I'll protect you. You don't have to worry because I know you're a little more fragile in terms of being able to protect yourself from all the harsh environment elements, like all the elements, but I'm really bad at making energy. So I protect you. You make energy for me, sign on the dotted line. Does that sound like a good agreement? And so that is kind of how we got mitochondria. They're basically reminiscent bacteria that used to be free in the environment that we ourselves, all cells basically, have harnessed in order to utilize their energy making capabilities. And so they can pull electrons from multiple sources and pass those electrons through like a conveyor belt, like a 5-step conveyor belt, and make something called ATP. And they also make water, which I want to say that's a key component of making energy in the body. They make water and ATP. ATP has been known as like the energy currency of the cell. But both of those things, the water and the ATP, is we need a certain amount of that in each and every cell in order for our cell to have enough energy for us to feel like we have energy.
So what causes poor mitochondrial health? Maybe we can start there and work our way backwards for how to optimize.
Sure. So I would say that there's a variety of categories that can trigger poor mitochondrial health. There are toxins in the environment that we know are directly toxic to mitochondria. We also know that poor food choices, mostly processed foods, refined sugars, processed foods, those things can also challenge mitochondria. And anytime a mitochondria, when a mitochondria gets damaged, it gets bigger, it swells, it becomes energy inefficient. And so here's a cool thing. This is kind of like an interesting thing with the quantum biology is as anything, this is like a general perspective in physics. As things lose energy or become less energy efficient, they swell. So picture a sprained ankle, it swells. Picture a dying star. It's called a red giant. It swells. And so a common property in physics is that if things are swollen, they're less energy efficient. So the goal to make healthy mitochondria is to shrink those mitochondria into the exact perfect size so that they can take electrons, bounce them through this conveyor belt and make ATP and water.
So would you say that they're inflamed? I mean, that's pretty much what it is. So is it more so we have to ask the question of what causes mitochondrial inflammation? And you said toxins, you said the processed foods, added sugar. What toxins are you talking about there? Because my members they're familiar with that word, like toxins. And I think in my most recent insulin resistance presentation, I have a slide of toxins, but which ones do you focus on specifically?
I focus on three specifically, the most potent being glyphosate or the herbicide Roundup, which actually it damages not only the mitochondria, it not only causes the mitochondria to swell, but it damages the conveyor belt too. So the steps also get damaged by glyphosate. Heavy metals, but especially aluminum has been one because aluminum kind of binds with glyphosate and they cause added damage, especially in the brain. So one of the areas that I hear all the time is why I have brain fog, or it's like, I walked into that room and I couldn't think of why I walked into that room, or what was I going to get at the grocery store? It was 5 things and I could only remember 2. And so there's that's a mitochondrial component. That's an energy component in there, an inflammation component. And then the other thing is fluoride. That's a little more controversial for saying that, but fluoride changes the water in the body. And because of that, it can damage the mitochondria.
I'd like to dig into the first one, especially. My husband is a farmer, and so chemicals is unfortunately a part of his existence. So what can he do to protect himself against the toxins that might be in the Roundup that they're using, for example? I know they take certain precautions, but ideally, what can he do? Because I'm in Nebraska, there's a lot of agriculture around me. What can they do to protect themselves and their families?
Trying to, obviously avoidance is the key strategy, right? And so that would potentially mean if you're shopping for food, shop at local farms that may have sustainable, not necessarily certified organic, because that's expensive for small farms, maybe more of a small farm setting where there's more organic produce where they don't use Roundup. Otherwise, for him, it's using protective gear if he's in that sort of a situation. And then the other thing is then thinking about if it's in his system, if it's in all of our systems, frankly, because it's pervasive right now, it's pervasive. We can do things that will pull it out of our body and replace it with a specific amino acid called glycine that then kind of heals everything back up.
Okay, so then the aluminum, what are the big culprits for aluminum that you recognize in your clients for how we can reduce exposure to aluminum, and then fluoride too?
So aluminum comes in, believe it or not, a ton of personal care products. But I would say deodorant is a huge one. We absorb at least 60% of what we put on our skin. So being very aware of what goes on our skin, especially in like the thinner skinned areas like the armpits, because we'll absorb a lot of things through there. We get aluminum also, jet smoke, airplane smoke. I mean, it's just there, right? It's in exhaust fumes. So we can't necessarily ever avoid it because it's out there in the environment and things that we can't control. But we can control what we put on our bodies. We can control using not heating things on aluminum foil, which can cause the aluminum to leach into the food.
Oh, okay.
Aluminum cookware, right? We can avoid it in those circumstances.
Yeah, that's a really practical one that I should probably definitely change for my cooking practices because it's so common. And if you don't study this stuff, I study science stuff. I don't even know that. So that's a really helpful tip. What about fluoride? Are you talking like the stuff that they put on our children's teeth?
I don't, so I'm not anti topical fluoride, right? Because I do think I think there's evidence out there to show that it can be, prevent cavities. But what a lot of municipalities are doing now is they've added fluoride into their water system. And ingesting fluoride in the water, it changes the water, how our water interacts with it. It actually changes the collagen in our bodies. So, and that's another component of health, right? Is the health of our collagen. And believe it or not, is a really important health of our bodies. But looking at it just as like a superficial level, like, 40-year-old mom right here, it's like, it can cause degradation of the collagen, right? I don't want to have that happen. So it turns on enzymes that break down and eat up the collagen. And so we would want to avoid that as much as possible. And also then it has the damaging effects to the mitochondria.
Okay, so tell us, I want to break it down a little bit more.
Sure.
What are your recommendations for, because I'm kind of at this stage of the game. I'm like, I got the big stuff. I'm going to the micro stuff.
Yep.
What kind of deodorant do you recommend? What kind of, skin and hair care products do you recommend?
Okay. So like I stopped using lotion a long time ago, and it was a transition period from like me getting dry skin to now my skin just naturally contains the right amount of moisture. I think I really relied on my own skin for needing an outside moisture source. As I was transitioning, I used something like a jojoba oil, or I even used olive oil if I didn't care about how I smelled, or coconut oil. And I found that to be an easy transition in terms of like a body lotion. Deodorant, I'm currently using.
Let's keep it right here by my desk.
Right. I'm currently using something called Schmidt's, but I've used a whole bunch of other types as well of the natural brand. There's a natural brand that's called Jason's. There's Tom's brand. So a lot of the brands that you'll find at health food stores have become really smart about getting rid of the aluminum, especially in the deodorant, because that's easily absorbed. And then, I do use a non-fluoridated toothpaste source, simply because we have fluoride in the water here. And so I've had to filter out our fluoride. I just feel like my body, I just learned about this, right? A few years ago. So I feel like my body has been overburdened with fluoride. And so my goal is going to be to reduce my fluoride exposure as much as possible, so my body can start to get rid of it. We have our own beautiful detoxification pathways. And so that's part of where like intermittent fasting comes into play, or this thing called autophagy comes into play, because we can get rid of this stuff as long as we decrease the burden, the load on the body.
Yeah. And that's something that we just haven't. I'm so excited to bring this stuff to my listeners and my members, because it's so cool that we don't see it, but it does make a big difference. And it makes a big difference with your mitochondrial health and how you metabolize things and your fat loss. So I wanted to talk about hair care. What kind of shampoo and conditioner do you use? And then what kind of makeup, if you use any makeup, do you use?
Okay. So getting ready for a podcast beforehand, I like, there's the brand that I use is called Mineral Fusion for my makeup, right? And then my hair care stuff, I simply go to the health food store and get what's on sale. There's less aluminum to be worried about in there, but there's something called endocrine disruptors that are concerned that mimics estrogen, which can be, especially, perimenopause, menopause, that can be a challenging thing to have those endocrine disruptors. So I try to get something from the health food store that they're typically the ones that are sourced there are much better in terms of not mimicking estrogen in the body. And what I actually did in order to promote or to lessen my exposure, I again taught myself how to wash my hair less. It's like, instead of washing it every single day, it's like I wash it 2, maybe 3 times a week. And then the hair starts to make less oil. And so you could keep just natural hair, and then, you got your day where you got like the ponytail and the bun, and then, you start over again. So I've actually just taught myself how to wash my hair less when I'm in the shower. It's just like rinse everything else off, but don't worry about this.
I do the same, but I'm just lazy. I haven't been doing it intentionally, but unless I have a good sweat, I don't really wash my hair. It doesn't get greasy. Now the lotion thing is interesting. What about, my husband's always like, why do you buy those lotions? You don't need that. And I'm like, but my skin will get so dry if I don't use lotion. And especially in Nebraska, our environment fluctuates a lot. So the summer is really hot and humid. Our winters are really cold and dry. So can the skin adapt to that kind of humidity and temperature extreme pretty well.
As my own experiment, I find that only in Michigan, right? Kalamazoo, Michigan, middle of winter, bitter temperatures. I would say only on days where I'm like outside a lot and have that, the wind and the cold is when I really have to worry about moisturizing. All the rest of the time, my skin has adapted to making the right amount of moisture to, my environment provides so much moisture or takes so much away, and my skin adapts accordingly.
Okay, how about lip care? Because I'm all about my lip balm. I cannot handle unglossed lips for whatever reason. I don't know. It just bothers me, especially at night. You should. This is maybe TMI for my listeners. I have a nose strip that holds my nasal passages open so that I can breathe. I have both retainers from 8th grade still intact. Maybe that's harmful. I don't know. Is it bad to have metal in your mouth?
No, I don't think metal is bad in your mouth, and that shouldn't leach at all. That should be okay. And breathing at night, actually, that's a good thing to make note of. Snoring and not being able to breathe at night, that starves your mitochondria of oxygen. So talk about another thing that could damage mitochondria that, we didn't even highlight, but that could be one of them.
Okay. Well, that's really good. And then I have my blue light blocking glasses that I wear at night.
Good.
And I don't know. Then I have to have my lip balm, and I used to wear earplugs and an eye mask too. And my husband just made so much fun of me. And he's like, "You're no longer allowed to wear your night mask and your earplugs." And I was just like, fine, I'll keep my other 3 or 4 nerd things that help me sleep.
Sure.
So anywho, back to the lip balm.
Sure.
Tell us about our lip balm and how, if we have kind of chapped lips like I do, what we can do about it in a way that supports our mitochondrial health.
Well, let's see what I have in front of me right here. This is just a salve made out of calendula. So this is calendula and jojoba oil and some vitamin E. So a little bit of olive oil too. And so, like all natural ingredients, you get a little gloss right going. But so here's the deal, right? And you would not want this, but a strategy that's been, popularized, I would say, over the past 5 years for helping people breathe through their nose at night. Yes, it's like the nose strip. Have you heard of mouth taping?
No.
Oh my gosh, it's a whole nother topic.
What is it?
You use more of a really weakened kinesio tape. So not sticky, but like a biological tape, if you will. And you just put a little patch right here. This is for my, my performance breathing specialist, right? So you put a little piece right here to keep your mouth shut at night, so that if you needed to, there's no panic, but it forces nasal breathing at night. And that nasal breathing is such a better way to bring oxygen deep into the lungs, where there's more blood flow in the lungs, and the blood then can bring the oxygen to the tissues better.
That also reduce pillow talk, which would make my husband happy, because especially now during harvest, he's like, just be quiet and let me go to sleep.
Just let me sleep.
But I haven't seen you all day and have all of these stories to tell you. So what else can we do for our sleep? And let's kind of dive into, unless you had anything else on skincare, hair care, lip care, makeup, deodorant. I'm going to link up to all those resources. I'll go back and I'm going to link to all of those. But for mitochondrial health and health in general, I think sleep is so important. So can you explain a little bit more on that quantum level, what sleep does for our mitochondria and our energy?
So sleep is where we do 2 things. The first half of the night for sleep is meant for physical repair. So repair of all the physical tissues that we damaged, or metabolic toxins that built up during the day. And then the second half of sleep is responsible for encoding memories. So, right now I know my neighbor is mowing the yard and it's 1:00 in the afternoon. And I know I'm picking that up and my brain is storing it in a temporary file, but at night I'm going to prune that file. I'm going to get rid of it because it's not important for me to remember in the long term. And so we have 2 kind of things that we have to do. And so we need to really maximize for our mitochondria. We need to maximize those first 4 hours of sleep. And in talking about circadian rhythm, there is an optimal timing for that. And I hate to put sleep pressure on people, because sometimes it's I'm getting sleep anxiety, and it's not meant to be like that. But we do need to know that hormonally, we release our anti-aging and repair hormones starting at 10 p.m. it peaks between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. It's called human growth hormone. And so that, in conjunction with a spike in melatonin that we have when we go to sleep, is what signals our body to repair broken mitochondria. And so if we can get some really good quality sleep from like 10 till 1, somewhere in there, we're going to go ahead and do some really good repair for those potentially broken mitochondrial engines.
Does that depend on your normal sleep cycle? Or because when you say circadian rhythm, I think of, daytime, nighttime. Maybe let's take a step back and talk about what that actually is.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we have nurses, who are working the night shift, and maybe they're used to sleeping during the day. So do their hormones compensate with their normal schedule, or not so much?
It's tough because now shift work, this is not much, but shift work is now classified as a class like 2 carcinogen, meaning it has the potential to really disrupt everything hormonally, energetically, and cause issues. So if I have someone who's doing shift work, I say, do the best you can. And whenever you're getting your sleep, at least try to make it as sound as possible. But when in doubt, if people can start to shift from a night shift, if ever there's that opportunity, that's highly encouraged, because circadian rhythm just basically is a 24-hour body clock that literally every organism on the planet has run on. And it's based on the most potent signal of day and night, which is light. And so we run a certain set of programs when it's daylight, we run a certain set of programs when there's darkness. And when we have daylight, when we really have light all the time, that can mess things up. Or when we have light at night, that's why you wear blue blockers, right? Because it helps with sleep, it helps with melatonin, but it helps to keep your circadian rhythm to say, even though I'm watching TV at night, I'm not sending the signal to my brain. I'm blocking the signal to my brain that it's bright and it's daytime, so that I can, when I go to bed, I can still run my nighttime programs.
Okay, so 10 to 1 is really important. So how can we optimize that? How can we optimize that time of sleep?
It's so interestingly, we start optimizing sleep with morning sunlight exposure.
Tell me about that.
Okay. So like there's melatonin is also interchangeable. Like another chemical becomes melatonin that we're familiar with, and it's called serotonin. And then there's another chemical in that pathway called tryptophan. And so tryptophan's like that. It's an amino acid, but it's the one that we hear of on Thanksgiving. It's like, oh, I'm so tired, yes. Right? So too much tryptophan in the turkey. Yeah. So, but they all are together. And so at night, our melatonin gets broken down and used and becomes tryptophan. And then our body is so cool because it shoves that tryptophan to the back of our eyes. And in the morning, as soon as we get light from pretty much sunrise till about 2 hours after sunrise, that tryptophan captures packets of light, captures photons. Here's some of that quantum biology. That tryptophan literally captures, and this is also that organic chemistry that you made, that I meant, literally captures photons of light. So as soon as a powerful enough photon of light hits that tryptophan in the back of our eyes, that tryptophan becomes serotonin. And so nature, God, however you want to frame it, said, we have this beautiful pathway, right? We have a molecule that makes you still kind of feel groggy in the morning, but as soon as a bright enough light strikes the backs of your eyes, and it's not like you have to stare at the sun, because our eyes are like sponges for all the light in our environment. So literally these photons get soaked in. They hit that tryptophan becomes serotonin. So that makes us feel good during the day. So it's like I shake off the grogginess. I feel really awesome during the day because serotonin makes us feel good. And then that serotonin, as soon as the brain starts to recognize darkness, that serotonin gets converted to melatonin to put us to sleep.
That's fascinating.
So like we have to take tryptophan and make it into serotonin so that we can take that serotonin and make it into melatonin.
Okay, so I want to ask you this. Is there a difference between artificial light and natural light when it comes to that conversion process from the tryptophan, correct?
Correct.
To the serotonin?
Yes, there is. Now, there is some good research talking about, have you seen those blue light boxes, those seasonal affective disorder, SAD light boxes, right? And so those can be beneficial, but those are a specific bright light. And I'm going to say they can have a benefit, but natural light is better because our body as a whole Literally, natural light from the sun is made up of every color of the rainbow. So we've all seen a little crystal hang in the window or a prism, right? And it like scatters the light so we see all the beautiful colors. So sunlight has all those colors in it. We just don't see those colors unless it's through a prism, but our body feels those colors. We have ways to capture all those colors, and all of those colors do something different physiologically. And so it's like a nutrient deficiency when we don't get all of the colors, or it's like a nutrient overload. Like, we have like toxicity. It's like, you don't want to have too much copper in the body or too much iron, right? That's damaging to the body. It can drive inflammation. Same way, we don't want this overload of one specific light frequency. And right now, nowadays, we're getting overload of that blue light, right? That blue light frequency. And so to answer your question, it's always better. Can you hack it a little bit with light? Yes, but it's always better to get the natural light frequencies. But the coolest part about quantum biology is this principle that a small stimulus has a massive effect, and consistency matters. So what that means is, if I know right now, this morning, sunrise here was 7:36 in the morning, right? And so I was out from 7:32 till 7:39, something like that, right? Before, after kid drop off, before going to the coffee shop, whatever I had to do. And so after kid drop off, it was like, park in the parking lot, roll the windows down, make sure the windows are rolled down in the car, glasses off, sky gaze east for 5 minutes, capture that signal into my eyes, into my tryptophan, and other chemicals too. And then that creates like this amplification cascade that then just continues to work for me during the day. But I had to get that signal for it to happen.
And that's a really good practical point. So do you guys have daylight savings time?
We do.
Okay. So we're going to be falling back. I think it's in November or something. And so we will have more light in the morning. But when I think about practically applying this to my life, my kids are still young. Sometimes Leah just wakes up at the, crack of dawn. And it's like, what am I supposed to do? I have to take care of my babies. And then I have to get them into daycare. So what is that optimal time, or is there an optimal time, especially if it's not very convenient for us to go out right at sunrise? How do we mimic the benefits, I guess?
I would say, between any time you can get sunrise until about an hour and a half later. So there is a window that you can do that conversion. The other thing is that it's like little stimuli. So when it's not insanely cold out and I'm packing lunches or making coffee, it's like, okay, the kitchen window is open and I have my screen. Light, this is a hack, right? Light is, as a quantum perspective, light acts as both what's called a particle and a wave. So it acts like a bullet and it acts like water, which means that picture an aquarium full of water, right? And if I were to have a little square door with a screen in it, the water would leak out of the aquarium. In the same way, light from my environment will penetrate the tiny, tiny little screen window, like through the screen, and come into my environment. And so opening screens whenever you can, even little cracks, you're pulling nature's light into your house, and then minimizing your exposure to artificial light bulbs, just keeping the house in the morning. If it's dark outside, keep your house dimmer than you would. And same thing in the evening, keep your house dimmer as the sun goes down, just so that your brain recognizes a difference between when daylight is present and then when darkness is there. And then getting those little frequencies. So literally in January, we have a sliding back door. And so this is like me sticking my head out my sliding back door for like my little 2-minute sunrise into my eyes. And then on an ideal day, like a Friday when I don't have an appointment, or on the weekend, it's like, I'm going to go for a 30-minute walk, or sometimes even a 60-minute hike or something outside, and further strengthen it. But 2 minutes every single day, either through that little screen or through that little door, or like my sunroof cracked open as I'm driving the kids to school. They're like, Mom, it's -17 outside. But it's like, no, just look up, just get that light into your eyes.
It'll help you wake up, kids.
Right. It does though. Like, I challenge people I say, like, if you can do sunrise every day for a week and you go outside and you stare east, you'll just notice it's better than a cup of coffee. And I love coffee.
2 minutes, you said, right? Like
2 minutes.
2 minutes also. That's like the minimum dose of sunlight.
30 seconds, right? But do what you can. Like the effect needs to happen, and it needs to happen consistently, but it doesn't have to happen you don't have to be outside for 2 hours a day.
That's going to be, we have a monthly challenge inside my membership. And this last month, it was 20 push-ups a day and 20 seconds of planking. And I've been debating, I always pick it last minute, because if that's what is how I roll.
Sure.
And so that's going to be the challenge this month is going to be, at least 2 minutes gazing east. You're not looking into the sun, but your face and your eyes are looking into the bright direction of the sun.
Correct.
At least 2 minutes a day within an hour and a half of sunrise.
Yes. And just have naked eyes. And so that means no glasses, no contacts, no sunglasses, windows down, screens. So that's the key, right? Because unfortunately, listen, I've converted so many of my clients who were like chronic sunglass wearers. And I tell them, it's like, would you put a garbage bag over a plant, right? And block the light from the plant? Now that we know how important light into the eyes is, you wouldn't do that to a plant. So why do that to your eyes? The sunglasses will block that. And to different extents, glasses will, contacts will. If you have to do it with contacts, it's fine. Like you still can get around the contacts. There's ways to soak that light in, but ideally it's naked eyes to the skies.
Oh, I like that. Naked eyes to the skies. That's a good one. But I do wear contacts. I have terrible vision. I'm like probably legally blind. So, on the mornings that I can go out and I can lift my glasses up for a couple of minutes, I can do that and stare into the blur. Essentially is what that would be. But it's okay if I wear my contacts. Like I'm still going to get some benefit from that. You're saying
you'll for sure still get you'll get a 1,000 times bigger benefit doing that than not doing it.
Okay, but the sunglasses thing is real. So I always think, well, what did they do back in the prehistoric days when they didn't have sunglasses?
Right.
So do you recommend not ever wearing sunglasses?
If you're on the slopes all day and you get this reflection of light off the sun, or on the water all day, you may need protection. But there were some studies that were done back in the 60s, 70s, even before that, right? That were done on just one frequency of ultraviolet light that was projected really brightly into the eyes of monkeys. This is a sad study, into the eyes of monkeys whose pupils were dilated and their eyes were pinned open. And they said, oh, this monkey is showing retinal damage. Well, of course, because it can't dilate its eyes, it can't blink, it can't move its head away from the light source.
Yeah.
And it was only one frequency, only one of the colors. And what we know is that the red colors are healing. They're super soothing to inflammation. They're soothing to the mitochondria. They're just soothing to the body. Whereas the blue, the purple, the indigo, the ultraviolet, those sorts of things, those are a little more energy intense. So you have to have them in balance, right? So it's like nature doesn't just layer every color at once at sunrise. At sunrise, nature literally layers it, the rainbow. It's like red comes and orange, yellow, green. At the middle of the day is when you get all of the colors, and then nature takes them away, right? And so it's like colors come, colors go. And so during the most intense, bright part of the day, we're meant to be energized. We're meant to be, doing stuff. And so that's why we have the more energetic colors. And we have the soothing colors then at the start of the day and at the end of the day.
Okay, which is so fascinating. This is kind of, I've dabbled into this, but I have not had the pleasure of speaking with someone like you who really breaks down complicated science in fun ways that are easy to understand. So thank you for that. So most of the time, not recommending sunglasses unless there's some sort of glare, like you're skiing or skiing on the water, skiing on the slopes. Even sometimes I think they're like driving down the interstate. What are your thoughts on that? Because the road can even kind of cause this bright glare. So
that's a great question. Anytime your eyes feel discomfort and you can't mitigate that discomfort by putting your visor down or wearing a hat, then put on some sunglasses. But as soon as you get out of that discomfort, take them back off. Obviously listen to the body. That's a key sign that there could be an issue. But it really, truly, I don't see it unless it's day in, day out in that, like literally ski slope instructors that are the ones that are most having to wear sunglasses when it's that bright sun on the slopes. So.
Well, you kind of mentioned too that right now we're in a state of all of our phones, our technology, fake lighting inside, that we kind of have blue light overload. Can you explain some of the health effects that's having and how we can mitigate those?
Sure, absolutely. And so blue light, again, it's an energetic light. It's one of those ones that's just available. It's actually the light frequency that our bodies have used to tell what time of day it is. It's just the blue light. So we've got like these little receptors in the backs of our eyes, on our skin, in our subcutaneous fat, like the pinchable fat, we have these little receptors. And I just liken them to like catcher's mitts. And there's these catcher's mitts that are waiting to capture that blue light, right? And so they catch those blue light photons and hold them. And based on the number of catcher's mitts that are full, determines what time of day it is, because there's no blue light at sunrise, there's no blue light at sunset, and we get more and more and more of it, and then we get less and less and less of it. So naturally, we're going to get more catcher's mitts full and then less catcher's mitts full. And so that's how we've determined what time of day it is. Year in and year out, year in and year out, over and over and over again. And so, you know, tech companies were probably smart to say, well, I want someone to stare at a screen and I want them to feel energized. We also know that that blue light frequency stimulates the dopamine pathway in the brain. So there's that addictive quality to it. Believe it or not, you can make dopamine from sunlight too, through your eyes, but just like you do serotonin. But that being said, like, so we get this blue light screen that's super bright. It's like the middle of the day all the time. It never changes. And so it really starts to burn our dopamine tracks. So I deal with a ton of adolescents, or I also teach a couple of college classes where I'm dealing with students who come to me with anxiety, depression. And part of it is because they've run these pathways so much with their tech that it's hard for them to get enough of a hit of dopamine to elevate their mood. Like a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction, literally, right? Only with technology. And so then what happens with that blue light is when we look at it, when it's not meant to be there in our world. So after sunset, there's literally no blue light if we were outside. But all of a sudden, what do? We pull up our screens and we stare at it, and it tells our brain the wrong signal. It says, oh, wait, I thought the sun was going down and I was supposed to make melatonin, but no, don't do that. Boom, energy again. And that really throws people off. It actually suppresses melatonin, so people can't get to sleep at an early time. And now we know that blue light is tied to, you're gonna geek out on this. It's tied to an increase in diabetes, rates of diabetes, obesity, because that blue light, that brightness, stimulates blood sugar release. It stimulates almost like a little norepinephrine or a cortisol hit. Right. And so literally I have clients who say, well, I ate great during the day and I'm not losing weight, and it's like, well, are you staring at this blue light screen? Because it doesn't matter if you're eating food right now, your body is literally injecting glucose into your bloodstream because it thinks it's the middle of the day and you need to have energy to do something.
So are you telling me that my nerdy blue light blocking glasses can help balance my blood sugars in the evenings?
Absolutely. They're essential. I would say they're essential.
Okay, so I have to tell you this funny story. I got these blue light blocking glasses and I was actually wearing them all day when I was looking at my computer screen. And I found that I felt more tired, and I'm like, what is going on? I feel like I am tired during the middle of the day when I'm wearing my blue light blocking glasses as I was doing computer work or something like that. And I thought, wow, there must be something to this, because that's exactly what they're supposed to do, is make me more tired. Have you experienced that too?
I've had clients who've experienced it. Yes. So I know now, I go out for sunshine breaks all the time. So I still block blue light in so many different ways, because I don't think it's great for us. But I have had clients who are, really tech heavy in what they do. All of a sudden it's like they went, what was it, like the past 5 years, 3 years even or so, that they started putting the film on almost everyone's glasses. And so, it's like all of a sudden it's like, I'm exhausted all the time. Well, you're not getting that hit of blue light, and it's better not to get it from the computer screen. It's actually better to go outside and get it. But that just goes to show you there is a direct tie between the light we're exposed to and our energy levels and how our body functions.
Tell us a little bit more about that light energy connection regarding metabolism and fat loss.
Okay. So we talked about those mitochondria, right?
Yeah.
And those mitochondria convert electrons for energy and water. Where do those electrons come from? Well, they can come from the food that we eat, and they can also come from the body fat that we break down, or the stored sugar that we break down. Everything breaks down into electrons. So it's not called the carbohydrate, energy production chain, or the fat energy production. It's the electron transport chain in our mitochondria. They use electrons. Now, those electrons, where they come from, can matter. But that being said, Those mitochondria require light signals in order to know how to make energy efficiently for us. And the light frequencies that they use are mostly the red light, like the red portion of the spectrum, and even part of the spectrum that's not the red. It's called the infrared, which we sometimes is synonymous with heat for us, infrared heat. But our mitochondria, step 4, need 4 different frequencies of light in order to start to keep the pathway flowing. So if we're in a blue light toxic environment, if we're indoor creatures, so picture this typical scenario. This is like a typical, client conversation. Well, I work all day at the office and I get there before sunrise. I leave after sunset. I really don't go outside a ton. A typical indoor environment these days, especially an indoor office environment, has 0 red light. And that's because the light bulbs that we use, the fluorescent lighting and the LEDs, they're energy efficient, but they don't contain, they've literally cut out the red light frequency. I'm old enough to remember the incandescent bulbs, right? Which my mom, back in the day, that were generated light from a heat source. That it's called a tungsten filament, and it would generate heat. And my mom would be like, "Don't touch those, they're hot, right?" And so those had a lot of red light in them, but they're energy inefficient. So we traded these energy efficient bulbs for the incandescent ones, but we now have 0 red light in our indoor environment. Even windows, glass. So even if you have got this beautiful, glass in front of you, glass blocks at least 50% of the red light frequencies again. And so if my mitochondria literally need those red light frequencies to make energy and I'm never getting them, that's why we're fatigued. That's why we're also storing body fat, because we're not converting energy efficiently. So the body says, I need to hold on to more electrons, if you will, more body fat. I need to store more electrons because she's not making all this into energy. We lose electrons in the process. And so we lose electrons, those lost electrons become inflammation, believe it or not. And so we're losing electrons. It's becoming inflammation. It's not making energy, and it's causing us to hoard more body fat.
Okay, that's fascinating.
That's the quantum fat loss perspective right there.
I was picturing you several times throughout this interview, just doing such a great job lecturing to college students. I feel like you do such a great job at teaching this information. So I kind of view that as a weight loss plateau thing, that a lot of people get to this plateau of weight loss and they think, well, do I need to change up my exercise? Do I need to change up my nutrition? And a lot of times I go to sleep and stress, but I feel like now another great tool in my arsenal is sunshine. And what's your light environment, and how does that actually impact your metabolism? So what health benefits, I'm just curious, over the last 5 years, have you noticed in yourself by optimizing your mitochondrial health, reducing toxins, honoring your circadian rhythm, getting more light exposure, reducing blue light, increasing red light? All these things are all simple, but they really add up. And we have to talk about water still. So let's not forget that.
Sure, let's not forget water.
But what health benefits have you noticed in yourself?
As you talked about in my bio, right? Like at 23, college athlete, I felt old and decrepit. I had like these chronic subluxations that were happening. I had so many joint surgeries. Fast forward to having a baby, hormonal changes, circadian rhythm disruption, all that stuff, like feeling like garbage. So now I am, I'm over 40. So fast forward 10 years, I'm over 40. I am have more energy than I've ever had in my life. I feel like I'm trying less hard. I feel like I've implemented a couple of key things that are sustainable and effective, and it's made all the difference in the world. So I have energy. My digestion is great. I go to sleep really well. So I go to sleep really well. And, I still have mom brain, right? So I wake up easily if I hear like kids and stuff, but I feel like I've coached myself to get a really good quality, at least first 4 hours of sleep. I've coached that into my body. My movement is great. No joint pain. I love to hike and sprint and do all these things that I didn't think I was necessarily going to do based on how I felt at the age of 23. And I also have an interesting thing, right? So I am a proponent of a more ketogenic, low carb lifestyle. And I think you have to have metabolic flexibility. So that's a whole different topic. And I know you did some stuff on that with podcasting and things like that. So that's great. But I tried keto. When I was trying to deal with that initial inflammation of my son, like the digestive issues, the brain fog, the fatigue, and it didn't work for me because my light environment was crap. my son wasn't sleeping, and my son wasn't sleeping because we had lights on in the house all the time. Right. And then when he went to bed for his 40 minutes, I was on my blue lit phone, be like, why don't babies sleep? You know, it's like scroll, right. And it's like, well, I'm going to try keto because I hear it's like this really good for the body, you know, to generate more energy, reduce inflammation, you name it. And so I was trying to do all these things, and I literally felt more fatigue. I felt horrible on it. Fast forward to the past, 5 years being, ketogenic with metabolic flexibility and getting my light environment right made all the difference in the world. And so that circadian light component can be the difference in terms of a ketogenic diet or an anti-inflammatory nutrition plan or whatever it is that you're switching to, being more successful in your body versus not.
Yes, I've seen recent research that compared a high carb versus kind of a low glycemic, so maybe moderate. That's kind of what I advocate. I'm not anti-keto or whatever.
Right.
I'm kind of like in the lower carb realm versus straight keto.
Sure.
And to a keto. And they found that the keto lifestyle had increased markers of inflammation. Nowhere in the study did it mention light. And I think that that's so important to recognize that it's not a one, you can't just it's not a turnkey solution. You have to really optimize all of these pillars of health to get optimal health. You can't just try a certain diet and not assess the rest of your lifestyle and blame the diet. So I think that's really cool to hear about. I wanted to talk about two more things, specifically water and autophagy, because those are so important. And I think autophagy and low carb can play into with each other. Cause I always say you don't have to do keto to get into ketosis. And that's the beauty of intermittent fasting. So let's talk about those. You can kind of start wherever you want. And
sure. Well, I'll talk autophagy first, because that also, things that you do to promote autophagy also promote mitochondrial health. They can promote water production, repair in the body. So autophagy, I find, is a couple of things I like to stimulate autophagy in the body. And one of them is what I call burst exercise. It used to be, it's called high intensity interval training, but I think that is too intimidating. It's like, I have to have high intensity, right? It's like, literally my almost 7-year-old mom does it just simply by marching high knees in place. It's just about getting this signal throughout your body that your heart rate is elevated or your muscles are working and you're working above a normal intensity that is your daily life. And so I love to incorporate the interval training, the burst training of just spiking something, challenging your body in some way to promote autophagy. And then combining that with the intermittent fasting and good quality sleep, and even the cold, right? The cold thermogenesis.
Oh yeah. We need to talk about that, because I am not a cold person, but I'm open to talking about it.
We can at least chat about it. Right. And so I feel like anytime we put the body under a beneficial stressor, our cells are resilient, right? So that beneficial stressor could be a sauna, so it could be heat. It could be that exercise that I was talking about. It could be cold therapy. It could be fasting or intermittent fasting. All of those are stressors. And actually we know that autophagy can increase from cognitive stress too. So doing researching. Really? Yeah. Doing things that
I didn't know that.
And so anything that's like a beneficial stressor, the body says, wait a second, we have to optimize function. We don't want that thing to feel as stressful the next time we do it. And so one of the ways that the body optimizes function is it takes a look at every protein in the cell, of which there's trillions, right? Trillions of proteins in our body. And proteins are just like little machines that do work for us, but machines get broken parts. And so the autophagy literally just goes in and replaces the broken parts. The alternative to that, if we're not running autophagy, is very energy and labor intensive, and it's making entirely new machines. And so if you're a company and you've got 40 different machines on a line, and you've got 3 machines that are broken with one part, I would rather just replace the part and then keep the line moving, as opposed to having to completely replace and make all new machines. And that's what happens when we don't run autophagy.
Okay, so what can we do? I mean, you kind of mentioned a few things, but let's dive into water. I mean, and I want to talk about intermittent fasting, because I've heard different things on timelines. And so I'd like to pick your brain a little bit about how long of an intermittent fast do we have to do before autophagy, quote unquote, turns on, or what's your opinion on it turning on, turning off through intermittent fasting?
if you dive into the research, which again, I have an issue with because pretty much no research done on lifestyle takes into consideration light, right? Your light environment, and no research on biochemistry or biology takes into consideration water. If you look at biochemistry research, they remove the water from the experiment. So I digress on that, but so it's hard to really take the research and say this is optimal. But what you're seeing is at some point at around the 12-hour mark, autophagy can start, right? Okay. And so that's a very short fast.
Yeah.
Now, if you've added stressors to it and you time it with sleep, it can be of even bigger benefit. And so I'm of the opinion, and I find the biggest benefit in my clients with a fueling window of 6 to 8 hours. Some, it's mainly men can go lower than that in terms of 4 hours of a fueling window. But I'm seeing a 6 to 8 hour fueling window is a beautiful thing. And when it's shifted earlier in the day, it's more beneficial. So let's say you're eating, instead of waiting until 2 o'clock in the afternoon and eating 2 to 8, you're better off shifting that and eating 8 to 2, or, somewhere in there, doing a couple of stressors. So maybe it's a sauna or an exercise session or a cold plunge, and then going to bed. And that then will turn on a bunch of autophagy programs so that your body can repair those broken parts. And then you can wake up in the morning, basically a younger human being than when you went to bed.
So red light, where does red light fall into that? Or is that kind of a different realm?
Photobiomodulation or
right.
red light therapy. That's mitochondrial health. That's that red light frequencies that step 4 of the mitochondrial energy making production process needs. And so another hack with mitochondrial health, if you're an office worker, yes, getting outside is super beneficial, but we're seeing so much of these red light therapy devices being used, and literally the Army, professional sports teams, NASA, every place is undergoing some extensive research on this red light therapy because we're all red light deficient. It's like being a nutrient deficient. And we're finding that adding red light back into most situations in an appropriate dose can be beneficial. And that benefit happens at the level of the mitochondria and at the level of the water network in our bodies.
Okay. So let's talk about water next.
Okay.
Because I actually invited you on as the water expert, and we have about 10 minutes left.
Talk water.
to talk about water, but the rest has been so fascinating too.
Sure.
So what are we missing? I think one thing that you mentioned was the fluoride in the water. Mm-hmm. And that's something that maybe, how can we learn, or how can we look up to see if there is fluoride in our water? What's a quick fix for that?
Every municipality, whatever.gov, kalamazoo.gov will provide a water report, it's called. And so look up and you can see if there's fluoride added in your water report. But 9 times out of 10, there's 2 different things when it comes to water, right? There's water that we consume. That's one thing. And there's water that our body makes is another thing. And then our body actually can store energy in our water. So instead of storing body fat, we can actually store water energy. Again, a sign of energy efficiency, meaning our body doesn't have to hold on to as much body fat. And so the water that we drink, we want it to be free of toxins. And I can recommend brands, right? There's the AquaTrue countertop that will filter out a whole bunch of stuff. It's a great countertop filtration system. Berkey, there's a company called Berkey, Berkeley without the L, with their fluoride remover. That's another great one. There's actually a pitcher even that I recommend for people. Now it's a crazy, insanely expensive pitcher. It's $79 for a Brita style pitcher, but it literally removes everything. And so we don't want, water is a huge source of toxins simply because people flush urine down the toilet that actually still contains metabolites of their medications. And, if we're near a farm, right, and the farm water runs off and that glyphosate then, so we have toxins in our water, so we have to filter those toxins out. And those are some really great ways to filter it out. And so we want to make sure we are drinking clean water. That's step number 1. Number 2, then, those mitochondria make water for us, and they make the purest form of water we can. That's step 4 of that energy production process. Step 4 makes water. Step 5 makes ATP. That's energy, right? And so we have to maximize steps 4 and 5. And so that's where the red light therapy will maximize that production. And that's where, believe it or not, the water inside of our bodies, it's not like water in a glass. It doesn't just slosh around like a liquid. It's actually something called the 4th phase of water, which has only been really discovered over the past decade or so. And like, I swear, I just did an interview with a guy who really not just discovered it, but really popularized it. I think he's going to win a Nobel Prize for this, because this is amazing stuff. The water in our bodies is a gel. It forms like a gel, or almost like a honey-like texture, consistency to it. And it does that when the water itself, it sits next to like a biological surface, which every part of our body is a biological surface inside of our cells. So you get this biological surface, water, it structures itself into a gel, and that gel is energetically charged. And so that gel can actually stores a negative charge, or almost like it stores electrons for us. So we don't have to store electrons in body fat. We can store electrons in our water. And then that water is someplace where we can draw electron and charge and energy from in order to energize our body. So I have found that people who are reliant only on food sources for energy, because they're not able to build up their water battery, they're relying on their food battery instead. They don't charge their water battery. They have to eat more food. And oftentimes when we eat more food, we have a less efficient energy conversion process. So in an ideal world, we're relying a lot on our water batteries. And so to maximize that, we have to have toxin-free water. And we find that water battery charges up most when it's exposed to infrared light or heat. All the research is pointing to this infrared region, literally charging your water battery, giving your body more energy. And so that infrared can be from sunlight, that infrared can be from a sauna, it can be from exercise, because we make our own heat with exercise. It can be from cuddling, it can be from sitting on a warm sidewalk, right? like you name it. There's so many ways that we can get infrared. And again, infrared, just like red light, is a missing nutrient these days. And it's having a really detrimental effect on our energy levels, and then also on our body's ability to heal inflammation, lose weight, you name it.
Oh my gosh, this was so fascinating.
Water in 3 minutes right there.
This has probably been my favorite podcast interview. I'm not going to lie.
Exciting.
And I've done quite a few now, but this was just really in-depth and science-based. I'm all about the science-based stuff. And I thought you did a wonderful job breaking it all down. So where can our listeners learn more about you, or is there anything else you wanted to add last minute to this interview? Anything that we missed?
Gosh, no, I just think I think that we have to focus on the light and the water, that matters. It really does. And so I'm excited. Oh, the other thing, your connective tissue, your collagen, that literally runs throughout your whole body.
Yep.
It can pull electrons from the surface of the earth. Grounding barefoot. So again, if you feel like you're low in energy and you're hoarding body fat and stuff like that, go barefoot outside as much as you can, touch the earth, because you'll literally, it's called semiconduction. You'll suck electrons out of the earth into your body, and then you'll hold those as energy, as opposed to holding on to other forms of storage energy.
Okay. I'm glad that you touched on that, because I said grounding in the introduction, and I was like, oh, I need to dig into what she means when she says grounding. Is it like grounding mindfulness exercises? But no, actually grounding yourself to the ground. Yep. Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
Barefoot in nature. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a reason why my kids always want to be barefoot outside. I think kids naturally know, right, what's healthy for them. So
yes.
No, I think that's all. And I've had so much fun chatting with you. Thanks for letting me nerd out. I really love this sort of thing.
I'm sure my audience is going to love this one. Where can they learn more about you?
So I'm on Instagram. Carrie B Wellness is Instagram. I also have a YouTube channel. I've started doing some podcasting and interviews, Carrie B Wellness. I've only had my latest 6, I believe, on YouTube, because my tech brain didn't go there. I started off on Spotify. So there's 4 previous episodes. The first 4 episodes really go over the light, the body fat, the sleep, the autophagy. So on Spotify, my podcast name is 2% Better Health with Carrie B. So
great.
Thanks
so much. I will link up to those as well. If people want to kind of take a deeper dive into something that we touched on here, I'll link up to those 4 kind of groundwork episodes in the show notes. But thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Awesome. Bye. Thanks, Morgan. Bye.